I also wanted to thank you for all of the clubs. I think that is an essential part of an educational experience. And so thank you, Dr. McLaughlin and Ms. Cirigliano, and to all the teachers who stay after school and facilitate these wonderful experiences for our students. I know it adds a lot to their day. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Cirigliano.
Okay, good evening. I want to start this report with an update on some of the professional learning opportunities that the district has participated in since the last board meeting in February. At the end of February and in the beginning of March, the district held 2 professional development days, which consisted of a variety of learning opportunities for our staff. To begin, our secondary staff at DMS and DHS came back together again with our partners at NYU to continue to dive into the work of building a culturally responsive, sustaining education organization. Working through our individual activities that focused our staff on the concepts of privilege and the experiences shared through writing our own racial autobiographies, our faculty was engaged in rich and meaningful discussions about their work, about our students, and where the two meet in the middle. Our teachers were and are very open-minded and ready to engage during both of these sessions. We looked at our data from the middle and the high school, which had us discussing race and ethnicity of our staff versus the race and ethnicity of our students and the implications of those differences. In addition, we looked at our graduation and post-secondary data as it relates to our student demographics. Lastly, we openly discussed terms like dominant cultural groups, ethnicity, and race, and how we personally interpret those terms. This work is different than any professional learning that we've done in the past, meaning that we begin with a self-analysis about our own beliefs and our role within the system around us, and continue to refine that work on the self as we begin to analyze outward and look at the system structures that are working and in existence around us. Our elementary staff had full days of professional learning in the following areas: dual language, articulation, iReady diagnostic data sharing, guided reading, STEM scopes, and responsive classroom training. Moving on from our recent professional learning days, our district also has begun the culture and climate survey work with our teachers and staff. The Staff Advisory Council met 3 times to help to have deep conversations about the survey, its content, the goals for the survey, and how best to match both of those areas together. The committee was focused on using the March PD Day to release the survey to the staff to have independent and uninterrupted time to complete the survey. A video was released to answer any questions before the release of the survey and to bring attention to the survey from the staff. I'd like to thank the following staff members who were a part of our committee, and that was also on a volunteer basis to be part of the new initiative: Carmela Fox, Christopher Scholl, Christina Sayez, Faride Hernandez, Grace Martinez, Jessica Nathan, John Ganio, John Hoferer, John Caniglio, Louis Jaime, Mary Walker, Milagros Castro, Kathleen Paderak, Richard Guglielmo, Rory Carl, and Christian Noel. As a continued part of this process, parents also are building the content for the parent survey, much like the teachers did. Parent responses for the building of the survey are due back this Friday, and the parent survey will be released shortly thereafter. In addition, I will be meeting with students Friday morning to gain their opinions on the student question banks. Their survey will be released after I gather all of their input. Although this is a long process, the engagement of each stakeholder group in building the survey content is absolutely critical to the success of the surveys themselves. Our next step is to close out all 4 surveys and analyze that data with our NYU partners. More on this to come in the future. And I just want to add a note here that I hand wrote prior to our meeting about an activity I was invited to participate in at North Dover. This is definitely a North Dover night. I was asked to be a guest reader. There were a number of us that were asked to be guest readers at North Dover for Read Across America. I received, in the day prior to my visit, spirit socks from the Spirit Committee, which were very much appreciated. I had a 6th grade student leader meet me at the door, dressed as the Cat in the Hat. She was my guide around the building to make sure that I knew where I was going, where my classrooms were.
Good.
Teachers were welcoming and students were engaging with the book that I read. It really brought me back to what it was like to be a teacher, and it was very nice to flip on those teacher skills and have the class in front of me. And I also wanted to mention that we have some members of the North Dover staff here that won the door decorating contest, which in my whole career, I have never seen such a display of doors. We had doors with QR codes. We had doors that looked like Starbucks cafes. It was phenomenal. John Caniglio and Angelica Rodriguez won, and also Jennifer Bono, who is not here now, but she was here during the presentation this evening. So I just wanted to give a shout out to North Dover again for that activity, because it's always nice when we can step out of the office and go visit the classrooms and have the students in front of us. It's a great reminder of all the long hours and the work that we're putting in, why we're doing that. So we appreciate the invite, and we'll be back to visit North Dover before the year is over. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cirigliano, for taking on the important New York University project, as well as the many varied and significant professional development offerings. This is amazingly important work that our community is doing, and I'd like to also thank you to the teachers. I know we, as the board, have done a very small amount of this type of training, and it's difficult sometimes to be reflective, and it's very hard work, and I'm excited to see the next steps that happen at all levels.
Thank you. I do appreciate the work in progress that is Atlas. I am learning so much being able to see our curriculum, one, learning how to use Atlas, and then learning how to read the curriculum, and then realizing the genius educators that we have that can create this, because I can barely read it, let alone create it. It's a little bit overwhelming to review in a limited amount of time, so I'm deeply grateful to the curriculum committee for taking that deep dive and taking on the work of that review and making their recommendations. I think I might benefit, I individually and maybe our full board would benefit from further instruction as to what exactly is expected of me as a board member with regard to the curriculum, and maybe a summary of the curriculum changes when it is a change, kind of like we do with policy. This is a new change in response to a change in the law, right? So we recently had the law that required education about our LGBTQIA community, and if there is a curriculum that was changed in response to that law, it might be helpful to say that, so I know kind of what I'm looking for, or why the change. I think it's been a while. I was on the curriculum committee for only 1 year, and I remember there learning that we weren't using Atlas. Atlas is new, so some of this curricula may be brand new, and so learning, why that was needed. Why do we need a brand new one? I know that QSAC, and I forget what QSAC stands for right now. Something about quality and standards, but I think it'd be helpful to learn more about that, how QSAC comes into play with regard to our curricula, and a little more time. So I don't know, if the curricula is already on Atlas, and for the April meeting, we're gonna have to review X, Y, and Z, if maybe tonight, okay, next month you'll be reviewing this, it's already on Atlas, and then it's up to me to schedule my own time to figure out when I'm going to review it, if that's possible. I want to make sure that we respect our code of conduct of, one, emailing questions in advance, with the exception of presentations that we wouldn't have access to in advance, and to emailing them on 10 a.m. by 10 a.m. on Monday before the meeting. And I failed to meet that deadline this time because I was trying to dive into all the curriculum and gather my thoughts. With regard to I looked at the minutes, and thank you for that, for making sure they're timely in the curriculum committee folder in our drive, in our shared drive. It says that all these curricula meet our state standards and our SEL standards, which I assume means social emotional learning. And so is this meeting the standard, right? Is this the floor and the basic? Or can we go above and beyond and yes, meet the standards, but also have creative, robust, challenging curricula, which what I saw was that, but I don't have anything to compare it to. So I'm wondering if we could kind of get maybe some opinion of it. And for the SAT prep, I'm wondering, and we've asked this many times before for many years, and I don't know that I have ever been satisfied with the answer. Are we using, and if not, can we use state and federal or even private grant funding to provide additional after-school and weekend SAT prep support, maybe in English and in Spanish, and the kind of marketing piece to recruit the students? Because I have heard, well, the class is there, but they don't show up. And I certainly wasn't showing up on the weekend when I had to work nights on Friday on a Saturday morning to do SAT prep. I know that requires staffing issues, and COVID is, I know that there may be several barriers and hurdles to that. I'm just concerned that we're using our valuable, or considering using our valuable class time, our valuable time to have social, emotional, and creative learning, and connections with our educators to just prep for an SAT exam. And you know, if any of my questions are just above and beyond and not my role, that's fine too. But based on what I'm understanding my role is, those are my concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Ruiz.
Dr. Sain, if I can add
Sure.
or question. Mr. Cirigliano put together a video, about 17-minute, 20-minute video, kind of walking us through Atlas, and thank you so much because that's really helpful. But I found most helpful your teaching in regards to, hey, this is what each section of the curriculum is, and look out for this. And my understanding is not so much that it's a role to go, word for word, line for line, because we're not educators, so we would not know exactly what is to be there that best teaches the children, right, or facilitates their learning. But I really feel like that gave me an understanding of, oh, it's there, good, let me ask more details if needed, right? So I found that was helpful. I don't know if maybe Ms. Ruiz could, answering what is our role when it comes to curriculum review, right? Us as a board, I think that's something that we can certainly, we have an educator among us, right, that we can, use our own resources and talk to Dr. Sain about what should I look for, because that was something that I did earlier on, and that was helpful as well. So I would suggest that we as each, members can kind of reach out and give her more work. But maybe we could do it, in little groups to assist. And I think that made it easier to review the curriculum.
Thank you.
Can I speak to some of those points?
Of course.
Timelines. So I will tell you, it is almost, it does not happen that we regularly look to invite our staff to become curriculum writers during the school year on top of all of their teaching assignments that they're completing. But we are caught. The state released new standards that have to be implemented by a date. At the same time, we looked at our current curriculum and realized the expansion that we needed to do. We needed to create curriculum with more specificity, if I can say that word. We needed a program that would allow us to create a live document instead of a PDF, so that our teachers can actually interact with that curriculum. They can add it, they can change it, they can basically use it almost like a Google Doc. There's a sharing in there, there's commenting in there. So we started that initiative, COVID hit, the DOE released those new standards, and here we are begging our staff to take on an additional role as a curriculum writer. That's unheard of. It's not a practice I like to do. I don't like teachers to have to think about writing curriculum on top of their teaching. Usually that's a summer project, right? I'm not teaching. I can now focus, specifically on curriculum writing. So with that being said, the timelines are tight. We're trying to get this done, and at the same time, administration is completing observations. We're getting ready for the budget. The timeline's rung along. I apologize for that. We're doing the best that we can, is essentially what I can say. The state standards act as the minimum. However, I will tell you, none of the curriculums that I have seen so far have met just the minimum, right? So that the state standard acts as what we have to cover, the content we have to cover. But when you start diving into that curriculum and you're looking at the assessments and the projects and what we saw tonight, the cross-curricular activities that are going on, that's where you'll see that above and beyond. If you dive deeper into the curriculum and you actually start to look at the lesson plans, you'll see it even more. So the standards are just, again, that is, we have very little choice in that. They are what they are. They're given to us by the state. We are obligated through the CUSAC process, you're right, to follow them, but I don't know any teacher that just does the bare minimum. It is a creative process to be a teacher, and to take a state standard, addition of 2-digit numbers, and in the classroom, you then bring that to life, and you make that creative, and you engage your students. The SAT prep, so the district in the result, one of the results of COVID that hit our district in particular was our Title I funding. People were not obligated, parents were not obligated to complete those free and reduced lunch applications, which directly impacted our Title I funds, which impacted what we use those funds for, one of those activities being the SAT prep. So we really worked strategically to get 2 of our schools, the high school being one of them, into the green when we received the amount of Title I allocations. It was a lot of maneuvering. As you know, there's a lot of that funding that goes towards class size reduction. We really had to strategize that in order to just get the 2 schools, the high school being one of them, into the green with their funding. So unfortunately, we are running SAT prep, but I don't think we are able to run the expansive program that we have in the past due to that one of the funding sources being changed through the pandemic. That doesn't mean that we're not looking to expand SAT prep. By strengthening our instructional core, that will help with the SAT prep, but a lot of SAT prep is also how to take the test, right? Doing samples of the test, practicing the questions, looking for, the little test tweaks that they have in the questions to throw students off, those little curveballs. A lot of that is not found in a particular course. That's more of the SAT prep.